Welcome to our open book. Very good to be with you. Um, Friends at Paris Review, of course, nobody does writer interviews like they do. Hi there, Rhonda. Hi there, Carla. Hi there, Dwayne. Hi there, SR. Hi there, Lori Tierney. Hi there, Jean Crawford. Hi there, Diana Lynch. Nice to meet you, Helene Steen. Hello, also, Elise. Catherine Capel. Nobody does writer interviews like the Paris Review. And Jeremy Sickey. This is their interview with Joan Didion. Ranges over so much. I've obviously excerpted it here. I sought it out today to try and resolve something in something I'm writing. And listen with this sad and unusual and insightful beginning. Joan Didion, hi there, Mr. Dickens. Joan Didion writes, "It is unusual for the interviewer to write this paragraph about the circumstances in which the interview was conducted. But the interviewer, in this case, Linda Kuehl, died not long after the tapes were transcribed. Linda and I talked on August 18 and 24, 1977, from about 10 in the morning until early afternoon. Both interviews took place in the living room of my husband's and my house on the ocean north of Los Angeles. Walls in that room were white. The floors were of terracotta tile, very highly polished. The glare off the sea was so pronounced in that room that corners of it seemed, by contrast, extremely dark. Everyone who sat in the room tended to gravitate toward those dark corners. Over the years, the room had in fact evolved to the point where the only comfortable chairs were in the dark, away from the windows. I mention this because I remember my fears about being interviewed, one of which was that I would be construed as the kind of loon who had maybe 300 degrees of sea view and kept all the chairs in a kind of sooty nook behind the fireplace. Linda's intelligence dispelled these fears immediately. Her interest in and acuity about the technical act of writing made me relaxed and even enthusiastic about talking, which I rarely am.
Do you see what Esther O'Brien says, that Harrison Ford was her carpenter at the house in Malibu?
Yeah. Wow. All right. Topping us as usual, Ezra. So the interviewer says, "You've said writing's a hostile act. Why?" It's hostile in that you're trying to make somebody see something the way you see it, trying to impose your idea, your picture. It's hostile to try and wrench around someone else's mind that way. Quite often, you want to tell somebody your dream, your nightmare. Well, nobody wants to hear about someone else's dream, good or bad. Nobody wants to walk around in it. The writer's always tricking the reader into listening to the dream. Are you conscious of the reader as you write? Do you write listening to the reader, listening to you? Joan Didion says, "Obviously, I listen to a reader, but the only reader I hear is me. I'm always writing to myself, so very possibly I'm committing an aggressive and hostile act toward myself." So when you ask, as you do in many nonfiction pieces, do you get the point? You are really asking yourself if you get the point. Yes, once in a while, when I first start to write pieces, I would try to write to a reader other than myself. I always failed. I'd always freeze up. When did you know you wanted to write? I wrote stories about the time I was a little girl, but I didn't want to be a writer. I wanted to be an actress. I didn't realize then that it's the same impulse. It's make-believe. It's performance, the only difference being that a writer can do it all alone. I was struck a few years ago when a friend of ours, an actress, was having dinner here with us and a couple of other writers. It suddenly occurred to me that she was the only person in the room who couldn't plan what she was going to do. She had to wait for someone to ask her. Strange way to live. Did any writer influence you more than others? I always say Hemingway. It's because he taught me how sentences worked. When I was 15 or 16, I would type out his stories to learn how sentences worked. I taught myself to type at the same time. A few years ago, when I was teaching a course at Berkeley, I reread A Farewell to Arms and fell right back into those sentences. They're perfect. Very direct sentences, smooth rivers, clear water over granite, no sinkholes. You've called Henry James an influence. Well, he wrote perfect sentences too, but very indirect, complicated. Sentences with sinkholes. You could drown in them. I wouldn't dare to write one. I'm not even sure I'd dare read James again. I loved those novels, much that I was paralyzed by them for a long time. All those possibilities, all that perfectly reconciled style, made me afraid to put words down. You once said, you have the first sentence, you've got your piece. That's what Hemingway said. All he needed was his first sentence, and he had a short story. Joan Didion says, what's so hard about that first sentence is that you're stuck with it. Everything else is going to flow out of that sentence, and by the time you've laid down the first two, their options are all gone. The first is the gesture, the second is the commitment. Yes, and the last sentence in a piece is another adventure. It should open the piece up. It should make you go back and start reading from page one. That's how it should be, but it doesn't always work. I think of writing anything at all as a kind of high wire act. The minute you start putting words on paper, you're eliminating possibilities. Unless you're Henry James. I wonder if your ethic, which you call your harsh Protestant ethic, doesn't close things up for you. Joan Didion says, I suppose that's part of the dynamic. I start a book, I want to make it perfect, want it to turn every color, want it to be the world. 10 pages in, I've already blown it, limited it, made it less, marred it. That's very discouraging. I hate the book at that point. After a while, I arrive in accommodation. Have many women writers been strong influences? Joan Didion says, I think only in the sense of being models for life, not for a style. I think that Bronte's probably attracted my delusions of theatricality. Something about George Eliot attracted me a great deal. I think I was not temperamentally attuned to either Jane Austen or Virginia Woolf. What are the disadvantages, if any, of being a woman writer? Joan Didion says, when I was starting to write in the late 50s, early 60s, there was a kind of social tradition in which male novelists could operate. Hard drinkers, bad livers, wives, war, big fish, Africa, Paris. No second acts. The man who wrote novels had a role in the world, and he could play that role and do whatever he wanted behind it. Women who wrote novels had no particular role. Women who wrote novels were quite often perceived as invalids. Carson McCullers, Jane Bowles, Flannery O'Connor, of course, novels by women tended to be described, even by their publishers, as sensitive. I'm not sure this is so true anymore, but it certainly was at the time, and I didn't much like it. I dealt with it the same way I deal with everything. I just tended my own garden, didn't pay much attention. I didn't let too many people know what I was doing. Do your characters talk to you? After a while. When I started a book of common prayer, all I knew about Charlotte was that she was a nervous talker and told pointless stories.
Sorry.
A distracted kind. Then one day I was writing the Christmas party at the American Embassy, and I had Charlotte tell this bizarre anecdote. The first 100 pages are very tricky. The first 40 pages especially, you have to make sure you have the characters you want. That's really the most complicated part. Do you have any writing rituals? Listen to this.
Oh, we listen to everything.
The most important is that I need an hour alone before dinner with a drink to go over what I've done that day. I can't do it late in the afternoon because I'm too close to it. Also, the drink helps. It removes me from the pages. So I spend this hour taking things out and putting other things in. Then I start the next day by redoing all of what I did the day before, following the evening notes. When I'm really working, I don't like to go out or have anybody to dinner because then I lose that hour. If I don't have the hour and start the next day with just some bad pages and nowhere to go, I'm in low spirits. Another thing I need to do when I'm near the end of the book is to sleep in the same room with it. That's one reason why I always go home to Sacramento to finish things. Somehow the book doesn't leave you when you're asleep right next to it. You said that when you were an editor at Vogue, Alan Tanney showed you how verbs work. Well, every day I would go into her office with 8 lines of copy or a caption or something. She would sit there and mark it up with a pencil and get very angry about extra words, about verbs not working. Nobody has time to do that except in a magazine like Vogue. Nobody, no teacher. I've taught, and I've tried to do it. But I didn't have that much time, and neither did the students. An 8-line caption, everything had to work, every word, every comma, it would end up being a Vogue caption. But on its own terms, it had to work perfectly.
That's interesting.
What misapprehensions, illusions, and so forth have you had to struggle against in your life? In a commencement speech, you once said there were many. All kinds. I was one of those children who tended to perceive the world in terms of things I read about. So I love this line. So I still see Icarus. I don't seem to have a set of physical facts at my disposal. I don't seem to understand how things really work. I just have an idea of how they work, which is always trouble. You seem to live your life on the edge, or at least on the literary idea of the edge. Joan Didion says, again, it's a literary idea, and it derives from what engaged me imaginatively as a child. I can recall disapproving of the golden mean, always thinking there was more to be learned from the dark journey. But the dark journey engaged me more. I once had in mind a very light novel, all surface, all conversations and memories and recollections of some people in Honolulu who were getting along just fine, one or two misapprehensions about the past notwithstanding. Well, I'm working on that book now, but it's not running that way. Not at all. Paris Review says, so it always turns into danger and apocalypse. Listen to this, California friends. Well, I grew up in a dangerous landscape. I think people are more affected than they know by landscapes and weather. Sacramento was a very extreme place. It was very flat, flatter than most people can imagine. And I still favor flat horizons. The weather in Sacramento was as extreme as the landscape. There were 2 rivers. And these rivers would flood in the winter and run dry in the summer. Winter was cold rain and tully fog. Summer was 100 degrees, 105 degrees, 110 degrees. All those extremes affect the way you deal with the world. It so happens that if you're a writer, the extremes always show up. They don't if you sell insurance.
Oh, no, they do. If
Let
you
me
sell.
tell you.
I do.
I think this side of the table is going to disagree.
No, what's interesting is
Well,
I
what
don't.
she's saying is,
And when was this interview done? In the 70s?
1977.
That's interesting. I think of temperatures in Sacramento now being in the 110, et cetera, but I thought of that more as a recent event. No, she's writing already about those extremes.
Yeah. So it's just a wonderful interview from our friends at Paris Review.
There's one, I just sent it to you in
That question.
2025 when they opened her archives
Yeah.
at the New York Public Library. And what the most popular thing people come to read is the notes on her Thanksgivings.
Oh, she had famous Thanksgivings.
She had famous
There's a book
Thanksgiving,
that's
yeah.
just come out.
Oh, my.
Right?
That's what
Did
I
I get
thought
it
you
for
were
you,
gonna
Scott?
read was this book.
Yeah.
And then
You got it.
I got it, yeah.
Oh, you have to read from it.
Yeah, I will. That's a good idea. Soon, I think.
Liam Neeson.
What?
Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
He went to Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Well, I can't promise he'll show up, but yeah, I'm sorry. We're doing the best we can. You know.
Right.
Jaco.
Jacques? No, I don't know.
Someone says S.R. Jaco. All right. So thanks very much for being with us in our open book. Okay. We might not have one tomorrow because I have an appointment, but we'll see if I'm back in time. Don't know yet. So thanks very much for being with us tonight. And thanks, Joan Didion. That's such a instructive
Yeah,
interview, isn't it? I
very.
mean, she really clarifies the process. It's just great. So thanks very much. See you later. Bye-bye.